All right, so here is our discussion board number 5, which is going over the Introduction to Picture Book Codes article that you read and the worksheet that you filled out. So I wanted to give you a couple of suggestions for watching this video lecture so that you can get the most out of it as possible. So my first recommendation is to have your Introduction to Picture Book Codes worksheet out as we go through this. I would also suggest that you have both Where the Wild Things Are and Olivia out to refer to so that you can flip to the specific page that I'm referring to. The next suggestion is that you take notes, whether it be on your actual worksheet or use sticky notes or paper to mark spots in your text that I discuss here in the lecture so that you can go back and refer to it later. And then also stop and start the lecture as needed. It's long because we're going to go through the entire worksheet and talk about how each of those codes are seen in these different scenes that we're going to look at, but it's a really important one, so I want to make sure that you have all of the information that you need, but that you are getting it in a way that's most easily accessible to you as a learner. So we're really going to go over this Introduction Picture Book Codes worksheet question by question so that you can get the right answers, but also so then I can explain to you what is going on in these images that I have pulled from Olivia or Where the Wild Things Are. I've also pulled a number of other texts to include as well to give you a few other examples. And then the answers are going to be in bold on each of these questions that we go over so that you can make sure that you have the right answers on your worksheet. So the first picture book code that I want to talk about is the idea of a total design. And so number 1 says the picture book, according to Mabius, is seen more and more to require an integral relationship between picture and word, or a total design. So this is a picture 2-page spread from Where the Wild Things Are. It's towards the beginning, and we have the words on the left side and another, but then we have this picture that gives us a lot more information about what is going on in the story. So this goes back to the idea of a total design. You have to have both word and picture to fully understand what is going on in the story. But I want to give you another example of how this can work in a picture book. So this is from Olivia, the story that we read for today, and these are the in papers on the story. And we often get these a lot of times in picture books, and it's just illustrations that the author includes and gives you an idea of what the story is going to be about, who the character is, before the story even really starts. I'm sure that you can find these in a number of other picture books that you may have come into contact with or are going to come into contact with. So when you're thinking about picture books and analyzing picture book codes, not only should you be thinking about where the story actually starts, but the whole entire picture book and what story it creates to give it that total design. All right, so moving on to number 2, Mabius argues that the best picture books can and do portray the intangible and invisible, ideas and concepts such as love, responsibility, a truth beyond the individual. So then his interpretation of that final line in Where the Wild Things Are, which is just a 1-page of just words, no pictures, he says that it represents mother love. So moving on to number 3, Mobius also suggests that the frequent depictions of gates, doors, windows, and stairs, of roads and waterways and light is not accidental or fortuitous, but downright basic to the symbolic force of the story. And what he means there is that it gives you an idea of the internal workings of the character and also their progress throughout the story. What have they learned? What kind of person they are. So if you look at these 2 pictures, these are from Hey Al, which I have given you the entire file for the entire book at the bottom of this discussion board today, just for your reference. It's a really neat book, so I would encourage you to look through it. And if you do decide to look through it, I would really highly suggest that you look at the things like gates, doors, windows, and stairs, roads and waterways, and light throughout this text because it does really interesting things. So at the beginning of this text, we have that on the left here. all of the doors in Al's home are closed, and this is really kind of similar to Al himself, who is he goes to work every day as a custodian, comes home to his dog, doesn't do much, but then he goes on an adventure, and at the very end we can see that all of his doors are open. And this is kind of talking about how he's changed, that he's more open to change, more open to new adventures that come along, but also that he's still, there's still similarities between these two pictures. We still have this bond between Al and his dog, but there has been some type of change that has gone on because we have the doors that are open now to new possibilities. You might think about this in Where the Wild Things Are as well as Max, who travels by sea in a boat on his adventure, and also travels by sea to come back home as well, and think about the ways in which he's changed from the beginning of the story to the end of the story. Height on the page is our next one, number 4. And so height on the page may be an indication of an ecstatic condition if you're higher up, or a dream vision, or a mark of social status or power, or of a positive self-image. So the higher that you are on the page, the more likely that one of these things are to be true. The lower that you are on the page, the opposite. So in the picture on the left, we have Max chasing after his dog, and we can see that he's a little higher on the page, so he is more powerful in this particular moment over the dog. However, if we look on the right side where we have this double page spread of him with the wild things, we can see that he's a little bit lower on the page with the wild things, and he doesn't have as much of a positive view on things because he's ready to go home. So I encourage you to think about, when we're going through these different pictures, where our characters are at on the page, and if that is in some way symbolic of their views of themselves or what's going on in the story. I should note that not all picture book codes work for all pictures, but sometimes they do. And when we notice those nuanced codes and how they're working, then we can get a little bit more understanding of the entire story rather than just what is presented to us at face value. All right, so moving on to number 5. In Möbius's code of diminishing returns, the more frequently the same character is depicted on the page, the less likely the character is to be in control of the situation. So this double page spread that I've presented for you is from Curious George. And if we start at the top, he finds this hat, he's looking at the hat. We've got the third image where the hat gets stuck on his head. He seems to be maybe losing a little bit of control in this moment. And then the fourth image that we have on that second page is where he's actually captured. So in this moment, George is no longer free, and he's actually picked up by the man and taken to America to go on all of these different adventures. So number 6, according to Möbius, a character shown on the left page is likely to be in a more secure, albeit potentially confined space, than one shown on the right, who is likely to be moving into a situation of risk or adventure. So if we look at these different double page spreads of Max going into the forest and his room turning into a forest, he always has this kind of he's going towards the right and moving into adventure. However, I think that this one is really interesting too. This is one of the last double page spreads in our text. So the same question, although Max is featured on the right side of the page, he's moving towards the left. So it almost seems as though he still has the potential to be adventurous, he is using his own self-agency to move back towards the left into a more secure location, and that of the safety of his home and the safety of his mother. So this is again another example of how we can use those codes and the understanding of those codes to get a more nuanced meaning of the text rather than just what at face value happens in the story. All right, so number 7, in the Code of Perspectives, the sudden absence of a horizon is likely to mean trouble or danger. So the images over here on the left are from the story about Ping, and it's about a little duckling who gets lost from his family and goes on a little bit of an adventure. So even once Ping has gotten lost, we can actually still see the horizon in a lot of these pictures. So for example, we have the horizon here, and of course here, and we can even see it here when he's moving towards a little bit more danger. However, here is the moment where we have the most danger. These big, huge black birds are swooping around Ping and he's afraid for his life. And you can see that we have the absence of horizon here. So not only do we have some different picture book codes with some colors and the shapes of the birds playing into what's going on in here in this picture, but also we have that absence of horizon, and that gives us an indication that something bad could happen to our character. That's all I'm going to show you about the story about Ping. However, if you do want to know, you are more than welcome to go check this book out at the library. But Ping does find his family and all is well after this. Nothing bad happens to him, so you can rest easy about Ping. So number 8, a character framed in a series of circular enclosures is more likely to be secure and content. And this actually goes back to the feeling that we have towards a mother's womb and how it's rounded. So there's some psychological analysis going on there that we feel more secure and content with round shapes, rather than ones that are framed in a series of utterly rectangular objects. So we have a few different pages from Olivia and the Missing Toy. And so if we look at this one that is up here on the left, we have this moment at the beginning of the story where Olivia has lost her toy. We can see that she says, "Where's my toy?" And there's a lot of rectangular shapes throughout this picture. We have the windows back here. We have the bed, which is rectangular. And we also have this rug as well. Then if we go down here to a moment where we kind of have our climax and Olivia has found out that her dog is chewing on her toy and has ripped it up. We have again this rectangular window, and then he's also has the window shadow casting over the dog as well, and then we have this rectangular door as well too. So not so content and secure is Olivia in this moment. And then we have here towards the end of the story, and she is framed in a circular object, and a lot of students ask before, but her bed is rectangular. I think the big picture, the code that we want to think about here though, is that this is the whole page and the majority of the page is in a circular. So this gives us idea that there's some closure to the story and that she's also feeling a little bit more secure and content in this moment. So number 9, this is kind of a long one, but thin, spare lines may suggest mobility and speed, whereas thick, blurred, or puffy lines are paralysis or stasis. What Möbius calls the code of capillarity refers to the presence or absence of squiggles or bundles. An abundance of such marks often signals vitality or even surefire of energy. So I want us to look at this image that appears towards the beginning of Where the Wild Things Are, and I want you to look at all the hash marking that is going on in the background of this image. We have a lot back here on the wall, but also even on the flooring, on the stairs, and even on Max himself. Gives us this indication that there's a lot of anxiety and energy within our character, and also just the scene in general. If you compare this to an image that's towards the end of this text, or even when Max is going on his adventure, a lot of the squiggles and lines and the hash marking goes away. And this gives us a sense that in this moment, Max is a little bit more calm. There's not so much pent-up energy that's built into that moment. Last one, number 10. As Möbius acknowledges, we associate certain feelings with certain colors, bright colors with exhilaration and discovery, and of dark colors with disappointment and confusion. In addition, we need to be especially aware of color as linkage among different objects. So our picture to the left here is again from Hey Al, and this is towards the beginning of the story where we have a lot of muted colors. We have a little bit of red, and our dog has a little bit of, orangish coloring on him, but there's not much other, bright, vibrant colors. And this gives us this idea that that's kind of symbolic of Al's life as well, a little bit muted in some ways. However, once we get to the moment where Al and his dog have gone on this adventure, there's a lot of a change in colors. There's these vibrant yellow colors, there's the blues from the water and green from the grass, and this is much different from the image that we had before of him at the house in the beginning of the story. So this is the moment in the story where he's kind of changing in some ways. And then lastly, this is the moment where Al and his dog have returned, and Al has decided to paint his home yellow, which links us back to the moment where he has been flown off onto this adventure with the birds. So this gives us an idea that he's still linked to that space in some ways, but he's still in his own space.